My colleague, fellow eNCA Thulasizwe Simelane, is in Braamfontein following the morning's proceedings. Thulasizwe, good morning. What else has come out of this? What have you picked out?
So there have been quite a number of themes, Braden, initially being about the issue of President Cyril Ramaphosa's former role as the leader of government business in Parliament, but focusing on, whether or not he and other leaders of the ANC engendered a spirit in which the Parliament was holding the executive to account, even in light of growing concerns, for instance, about the influence of the Gupta family in appointments to state-owned entities, cabinet appointments, and the likes. And in that vein, he was asked a number of questions about the role of Parliament. And it seemed to follow a similar theme to what we heard yesterday, acknowledgement, right, that things didn't go the way that they should have gone, and this was recognized at some point by the ANC itself, that actually our members of Parliament are not living up to being an activist Parliament, to being activists who hold the executive to account. Take a listen, for instance, Braden, how President Ramaphosa responded on the question of the leader of government business, and particularly Parliament, playing its oversight role in holding the executive to account.
For more than 5 years, I want to put to you, Parliament, as a matter of fact, did not investigate, hold inquiries, or do what was appropriate to investigate the veracity of these claims. Do you accept that?
I accept that and I concede that. And it is for that reason that in 2012, the decision that I referred you to, which you gladly showed me the relevant passages of the resolutions of, was then taken. Because, Chairperson, it was realized that we now need to activate another arm to go into this much more deeply than the ANC itself could. And that was the parliamentary process. And yes, as you said earlier, there was a dropping of the ball, if I may say so, at that level.
I wonder what, if you're a Deputy Chief Justice Zondo or an evidence leader, you listen to the President of the ANC says, yes, we dropped the ball, yes, I concede we lacked here and there.
That is the theme, Braden, that he has reiterated and said he's not here to defend the indefensible and he's not here to be defensive. And so, I mean, it's kind of, you can almost predict how it will go. For instance, on the question of, even as media reports were coming out, you did nothing as the ANC to investigate, to use the powers in Parliament, to actually tell your caucus to say, get on with it and investigate. He will say, well, I admit and I concede there was a delay, and saying that that delay did not serve South Africa well. And talking about part of the reasons for the delay was that there was contestation of some of the concepts at play here. Again, saying that even the whole idea of state capture was contested inside the ANC. Not everyone accepted initially that there is such a concept as state capture, and state capture is at play in the country, and saying that that contestation took its own time, and it had to do with the balance of conviction and the balance of conscience and understanding within the ANC, which basically means that they were stymied because they were politically deadlocked on whether or not there was state capture at play. Eventually, he says there was movement, and now, to use his word, the preponderance of views in the ANC is that there has been state capture, and that needs to be understood fully and investigated. Well, he had to answer some questions as well about his role as leader of government business. And I found that interchange quite interesting, Braden, because, to quote the book there, I think it's Rory Steyn saying, one step behind Mandela. Well, Cyril Ramaphosa was always one step behind Jacob Zuma. and he was not only Deputy President of the ANC, but Deputy President of the Republic, and also had the responsibility of being leader of government business. So how did he use that position of leader of government business in Parliament to influence how Parliament conducted its oversight role? Take a listen to him accounting on that score.
Sometimes even parliamentarians tend to want to exaggerate the role of the leader of government business, but it isn't. And as Deputy President, you really work also under the leadership of their President, who leads the executive. So in some ways, your role, much as it would appear like it is expansive, it is also a role that is constricted in terms of your role as Deputy President working together with the President.
Is it largely a facilitation role?
It is largely that.
Yes, to ensure the smooth functioning of both the executive and Parliament.
It is not an executive role.
Yeah.
And I see it now that, I play the role of President, that the Deputy President plays that role, and I'm able now to look at it from a vantage point of view and see how that role pans itself out. And of course, I should add that to the extent that it is an executive role, in those inverted commas, it is where, as the leader of government business, you are able to exert pressure on, for instance, truant ministers, if I can call them that, who don't answer questions. There are occasions where the leader of government business will be quite vociferous in cabinet in insisting that members of the executive must answer questions and pull them on the carpet and even meet them and say you've got to fulfill your obligations. So the role is a little behind the scenes to some extent.
I'm just wondering if that role is a little behind the scenes, as the President was saying there, Thulasizwe, and that some MPs would exaggerate it. But now he's got a vantage point as the current President of the Republic. From the position of the ANC, he thinks he can be used differently. Why have the role? I'm just wondering, because it's not doing anything. He says it's an executive inverted commas.
Yeah, so that's a constant refrain. With hindsight, looking at it now, from this vantage point, reflecting on it now, I realize and I acknowledge that's been a theme of Cyril Ramaphosa's testimony since yesterday. So on many questions, he is talking about that particular issue of hindsight. But another interesting discussion, Braden, that ensued, if I can maybe fast forward to that as well, is the whole role of, Parliament and the instructions and allegiance in terms of allegiance to the party versus allegiance to the Constitution when questions of oversight come up and questions such as the motions of no confidence, etc. It seems, and this was pointed out by Advocate Alec Freund, who is today's evidence leader, that President Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't seem to be decided or settling on one side or the other on this particular question. And indeed, when he gave an answer towards the end of the first part of today's session, I was left none the wiser as to, so which one does Cyril Ramaphosa prefer in terms of the system? Talking about, he says, quote unquote, I'm a party man and I'm a party animal. That's why I lead a political party, the ANC. There are matters, though, where individual conscience of a member would be such that it compels them to vote in a particular way and sometimes against the party line. But also then going back to the same themes that we used to hear during those 8 motions of no confidence against former President Jacob Zuma from people such as Gupta Mantashe, where there would be caution to say no party can be expected to implode its own government, its own executive, because if you pass a motion of no confidence, the entire executive has to leave with the president. And also that phrase we used to hear during that time as well, we're hearing it again, that the members of parliament who are there, quote unquote, don't represent their own jackets. They represent a political party, so the political party is the vehicle through which they end up in parliament. And that's why you heard Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo saying that, Advocate Freund may have raised this issue to a certain extent, but actually the DCJ, the chairperson of the commission, wants to take it up a bit further, because he would want to, at the end of it all, Braden, be able to make recommendations that say, how do we empower Parliament and its structures to ensure that in future, when confronted with questions of, a lack of probity in government and issues of misgovernance, each and every member knows where their allegiance lies with the Constitution, the people of South Africa, even if that means it imperils their standing and opportunities of promotion in a political party system. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion being taken forward as the session resumes.
Yeah, it's supposed to resume in about 3 minutes' time, according to the Deputy Chief Justice. We're watching those visuals coming in there. As soon as they come back, Thulasizwe will take it back there. But